Justin, J, style is substance. How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. It's one of those days. My summer has started. I need to clean my house. I
I can
finished.
see. I need to mow it.
Yeah, I need to mow it with this grass background. This is my new signature thing. I just don't want your subscribers seeing what my house looks like, or my apartment
I
rather.
know. I,
Um,
I forced them all to see the slightly crooked framed things in the back. I don't even know what they're for.
Framed things, probably pictures.
I
But
mean,
yeah, how are you doing, Zach? Where have you been?
I've been I've been sleeping, like napping all day, man.
Mhm.
I've been uh, I've been quitting drugs, right? So I've been like sleeping all day today. I've been napping. I've been napping until this conversation, but I'm ready to talk about Saw.
Right.
And
I saw
oh man, that
two, but not Saw two. But okay, I Saw yesterday, and in addition to seeing Saw, I also saw Saw, a uh, which is a little short film that James Wan also did beforehand, which was sort of remade into the film. But I have not seen the sequels yet, but I quite like Saw. What about you?
um I, I'm a big James Wan fan. I think he's a fucking shining light in this terrible, abysmal pit of modern cinema. I really like him a lot, and I like Saw a lot. I've seen all the Saw sequels, but I never saw the short film that you're talking about ever. Was it good?
It's good. It's good actually. So basically in Saw, do you remember the lady with the bear trap?
Oh yeah. If you
Yeah.
watch the other Saw movies, you'll know that Amanda is extremely integral to the to the lore.
So that whole scene that lasts probably about 4 minutes, that's more or less what the original Saw short film was, except it was with it was with a guy, but it's the same with that. They pretty much just like remade it. So that part was a little redundant because I watched it back and forth. But yeah, it's good. I like the movie. Um,
I remember when Saw came out. I didn't really look up much about this movie for some reason beforehand. 2004, I think it came out. But
yep.
it was a phenomenon. I don't think people understand how or remember just how huge this fucking movie was. And I guess on this channel we do talk about horror as if it comes in waves and eras, and arguably it does. But in that period, it was certainly a return because like my favorite period of horror films are those angsty teen melodrama postmodern ones. And that
Right.
had to end, and then in comes Eli Roth and Rob Zombie, and of course James Wan to the fray to take it over. And Saw is definitely a film that that explores the modern anxieties. In fact, the thing that stuck out to me most when I rewatched it today, I've probably seen it like 20 times just because it was the movie. I was 14 when it came out. It was the movie that everybody talked about. Like, have you seen this thing yet? But what stood out to me most was how incredibly dirty uh, every place inside of Saw is. It's like the dirtiest city, the dirtiest rooms I've ever seen, whether or not we're in Adam's like apartment or the hospital or the police
Yeah.
station. It's all incredibly dystopic. It's so dirty. It's filthy. It's wild.
Yeah, so it's a very low budget film for what it is, and they wanted to make the most out of it, so they wanted it to be iconic, and they achieved that by making it grimy, disgusting. You know, you have
Real. Every place.
and so much grit and details. Like you really you don't just see like the filthy walls. You see it like up close. You don't just see the toilet. You have somebody reach in and inside and pull out like a trash bag with
Yeah.
letters and stuff. That's what I liked about the set design here, and also just what Juan chose to focus on. He really gets you, he really immerses you in this atmosphere, and in many ways, it's like as I think as Adam says in the film, he calls it a shithole, and yeah, it really looks like it, you know.
Oh, every set, every part of everything looks terrible. The exteriors to the interiors, it looks awful. I'm sure that that speaks to the modern anxiety of the times, which I think we'll go into. more
Yeah.
specifically with these films, because this has a lot in common with something like a Hostel or some of the other quote unquote torture porn films of the day. This is definitely a defining one. I do think I just want to point out how interesting it is that James Wan, like, it's really difficult to be able to tell, to be able to find that thing that's going to permeate through popular culture, like through culture as a whole. It might be arguably more difficult to do than to make, quote unquote, meaningful art house films, because it like to permeate culture. That's to go under the skin of people who aren't even like wanting to receive that message. And he's done it for like 2 different decades. He made the Saw franchise, arguably the defining franchise of the 2000s, and then like currently the Conjuring universe. I mean, that was Wan's
Yeah.
creation. Wow.
In addition to that, well, I don't necessarily think it has the same longevity to it, but a cultural impact. But in the moment, Insidious was really big.
Insidious was huge, and
Everybody was
you
talking
brought
about
up
it.
Insidious. It also Lee Wanell, who wrote and acted as Adam in Saw One, co-wrote Insidious with James Wan and acted in one and two as well. It's a good collaborator for James Wan, and they make a good horror team. And Lee Wanell's not a bad filmmaker either, but he's no James Wan. This is cool. You know it's early Wan, but he's starting to already have fun playing with spatial impossibilities, the magic trick aesthetic of like he's just having fun, like rigging a game with the audience, making it impossible for the audience to see what's going on, but making it feel fair in the end somehow. He's already having fun with
He's having a lot of fun in it, and you really see that. And what I liked about it, and in comparison to some like more contemporary horror films, and by contemporary I mean like 2010, 2020s. Something that I like about it is it really feels sincere. Like it's just trying to be a horror film, and it's just trying to be its own thing. And I think it has its own identity, and that's why it succeeds. It may have not been well received critically, but like whatever.
I think it feels sincere, but just like a good horror movie, it's just everything about it is a lie. Just as James Wan's a really good liar. Like if you break it down logically, like it's unfair to the audience. The audience has no idea. Like it's so unfair. But it's probably that's a sincere way of making horror, because you are supposed to betray your audience. That's part of what makes horror movies scary, is because you don't know it, but they don't follow any sort of. They're not reasonable, really. That's the first thing about what makes a horror movie scary, is that they lack reason. But
well, I mean, talk about lies. I mean, one thing I liked about this, in the context of the narrative itself, like one thing that jumped out at me on this group. I've only seen it twice. I saw it once when I was like 18, and then I'm 25 now, and I forgot some of the things that happened, but the twists and turns that occur within this film, they are something. They're I'd like to say they're memorable, but I didn't remember them. But they when you're watching it, you really get hooked into it, especially when it's revealed that Adam has been following this guy the whole time, and it's like there's more to the story than what meets the eye. And there's something behind that mask, and they're playing this game, but like to them, it's not just a game. It's their they need to escape, but eventually, it's like, what does it take to get there?
yeah, exactly. And I mean, that speaks to culture at the time. What does it take to get to? So this film came out at a time during like the Iraq War, and a lot of
Right when it started.
yeah, but during a time when like the American identity as a whole was like in a state of constant compromise, if not completely transforming itself into something like openly morally ambiguous, if not completely disagreeable, like in the normal people's mind. Not necessarily we were playing a game, but we were
Treating it like a game.
Treating it like a game, but we were like reframing our moralistic like worldview. What will you do to survive? What will you do to have justice? What will you do to be secure?
And then bring other people to that, our infiltration in the Middle East. we basically tell them how we think that they ought to be, and then of course it messes everything up. But in a similar vein, Jigsaw is he's making these his victims. There's a sense of like faux like moralism that's tied behind it, where it's like, I am making you appreciate life by bringing you to the extreme to see the
Yeah.
darkness, and then by reaching into that darkness, you will come to see the light on the other side. That's the idea there. I think
And the film's entirely sympathetic to Jigsaw, and they only
it's
get more
almost too
sympathetic to
sympathetic. Like
Jigsaw.
if it's not sympathetic, it's at least like, okay, I can at least respect Jigsaw. I get where he's coming from. There's scenes where the cops and also like the victims, they were like, yeah, so where he's come from. The short film, it ends with the person. It ends with the cop asking the victim if she does if she's come to appreciate life more, and she is basically, it's suggested that yes, she did. And in the film, sorry, in the short film, it's not the girl, but in the film, it's she basically said, he's helped me. That is, it's almost like therapeutic in a way. And I would say it's like, in any like practical sense, if you take that seriously, I just don't think that's not, there's nothing moral about Jigsaw,
No,
but like, you can, maybe the film entertains his ideology, his philosophy, his warped sense of morals, and his practice a bit too much. Maybe that's an issue with it, but at the same time, it's like, when I'm watching horror films, I want something that is I don't necessarily seek something that's problematic, but when something is disagreeable, I like to see things from a point of view of this horrific like mindset, this horrific situation. And I don't have to agree with it, but I want to engage with the darkness and the way that people think. In some ways, it's like, yeah, when you're faced with something in contrast that's like so dark, yeah, you will come to understand, you will come to appreciate aspects of your life more. But at the same time, are those means really worth the, or do the means justify does the end justify the means,
no, but
really?
that was
Yeah, and
definitely like the
that's,
cultural riddle of the time.
yeah, exactly.
And to be truly horrific, the answer has to be yes in order for it to be a horror movie. If the answer was no, it wouldn't be a horror movie.
Yeah. Yeah, so like, and in some ways that's kind of what I liked about the film, is that it explores those concepts, maybe not with like any significant depth, it gets you thinking in
Just
some
enough
ways.
depth to like permeate culture, though. If they went any deeper, uh, because like culture fell into this without realizing that they were. If they went any deeper to it, and also it'd be debatable to just how much James Wan and Lee Winnell were like deliberately doing what they were doing too. But if it went any deeper, it would have missed the mark. Because it
Yeah,
has
I
to
can see
have
that.
just enough superficiality for the modern audience member to have like fun with it and not literally to just only subconsciously think about torturing people in Iraq, in the Middle
Yeah,
East.
and then also, yeah, but in many ways it is sort of how we have engaged with like uh, how we've dealt with like counterterrorism,
Mm-hmm.
like we'll rationalize things. We'll say something like, "Oh, it's a holy war." It's not. It's not. And we say things to justify atrocities, just like Jigsaw does. But in the same time, it's it's something. Um,
So it takes a lot to work through something
it,
like that. It
it,
takes a
it,
lot, and the biggest part of it is confronting it. And if you have to confront it, like through a roundabout way or subconsciously, that's fine too. But you are confronting it when you're watching something like this or Hostel or some of the other torture porn films.
yeah, and that's the thing that I've noticed. Like I don't think it's any real coincidence. Maybe it's like not necessarily like intentional, but it's no coincidence that the time that we've that overseas, and that we started using torturous methods to counter terrorism. That coincided with the rise of torture porn films.
Oh yeah.
It's where our minds were at culturally in the leading towards the mid 2000s.
Well, life became a commodity as well,
Yes, yeah,
or at least more clearly visible as a commodity. It probably always was, but it was just then that I think Americans were realizing it, particularly Americans.
and when it comes to art, I like confronting those that darkness within all of us, within culture, and viewing that, and that's what I like about horror. What I find interesting about Saw is that it has enough there where the film itself, the characters confront that.
Yeah.
Um, it's I like it.
Oh, and just for fun, like this was entirely not deliberate, but I was watching it, and the first character you see is Adam, like being birthed, submerged underwater, and like coming out of it, and Adam, the first man of this new this new horror movement. Thought
Yeah,
that was fun.
yeah, it's
Like
almost
it works. But
yeah, and then also just like him waking, and also him waking up and like, oh, we must turn on the lights and see what is new. Like,
exactly.
and this is what it is, and it's and not just that, but also you have to consider like, when it comes to like, I mean, I'm sure the other ones had higher budgets, but like in the case of Saw, like it's low budget filmmaking. It's like, hey, look, we can make the most of what we have, and I
Oh,
think
and
they
James
did.
did. Juan made
Yes.
the most of
Oh,
everything that he had.
absolutely. And like given the story, like I can't really imagine that being much bigger.
No, no, I could only imagine it being smaller. Part of me, because the first 15 minutes you are just in that room with Carrie Ellis and Lee Wanell. Like you are
Yeah,
just in a room with Adam and Lawrence for 15 minutes. And those are to me the most engaging parts of the movie. Outside of that whole the Amanda head in a vice thing that apparently is from the short that was
yeah,
obviously really well done, but they had a blueprint for that. Yeah, that's a
yeah.
really powerful thing. I mean, Donald Glover was like really good at
Yeah, no,
and
I honestly
so
like
was Ken Lung really his partner. He was awesome. He's kind
yeah.
of unsung, but his partner was really good in it too.
I think Glover steals
That's
the
the
show
only
when
death that like affected me because I was like, he seems that like, in this world that is filthy and dirty, he seems fine. He hasn't done anything entirely disagreeable. He seems fine. Glover was creepy as fuck, but of course he was supposed to be for like all these red herrings and misdirects like every 10 minutes and validates the previous 10. It's wild.
but that's part of the whole game thing. I mean, the guy's name is Jigsaw for a reason. It's like they're putting the pieces together.
And I don't care who you are. When this
Well,
movie first came out, you didn't know that Jigsaw was in the middle of the floor. You didn't fucking
I
know, and
didn't.
everyone's
Hey, when
mind was blown.
I saw I saw it 10 years after it came out. And you okay? Yeah, I saw it
Yeah,
10 years after it came out. And yeah, I didn't know. I was like, oh, okay. And he kind of pulls
fucking
like a Hannibal Lecter by getting up
mind
and kind of
blowing.
like, yeah, it's good stuff. But like,
And you spend the next half hour going like, I guess he regulated his breathing. I don't know. Make it seem like he was, or he was wearing some padding. I don't know. Falls
that
apart with logic, but it's beautiful.
that just, I mean, like, who he's a horror
But the
film.
Juan is so good at the prestige, right? At revealing the magic trick, at revealing the final movement of his pieces. Like
Well, yeah, well, that's what I'm thinking.
like
Like,
slamming that door shut and game over, and then it's blackness, and then it's Lee like screaming with directed by James Wan popping. I'm like,
yeah,
dude, beautiful. I
yeah,
would be so
yeah.
proud of that, James.
Not just that, like, but thematically, it's also like, you're putting the pieces back together, not just in terms of you know piecing together like what this game and what this what everything means, but also like piecing together kind of like what was lost within the human spirit prior to that, because it's like they want to return to appreciating life. So there's a reconstruction element to that, but then at the same time, there's also deconstruction because like in order to get there, you have deconstruct in order to reconstruct. So like that's what you have people having to like shoot each other, be fed poison, be electrocuted, be chained
Yeah,
up, sawed off. Yeah, there's a lot. There's interesting like thematics underpinning all of it. Um, yeah,
it's wild. Like we've talked about like gamification within horror movies before, and it's done in like a really insincere way. like in Final Destination, which is fine. But that's like the postmodern form of gamification where like nothing matters, but like we figured out it's a game now, but like, who cares who dies essentially? Whereas here, like everything does matter, but it's still gamified. Well, it's not gamified, it's commodified. And Final Destination was not commodified, it just didn't matter. At a certain point, Alex didn't care in that movie, or seemingly didn't care. He just cared about figuring out the I hope you guys have seen Final Destination, just like
We have a video about it.
Yeah, watch my video about it. We talk about like Jacob put it pretty well that it's like the best, like the only reason necessary of why postmodern horror movies have to die, because there's not too many places you could go to after that. At that point, doesn't care. But here, of course, it's commodified, so there's still value placed on human life, but like you've said, like you've covered, it's almost like a life has no value unless it's been tested.
Mm-hmm. So, well, I mean, it's kind of like the whole idea of Jesus going through hell to get to heaven, kind of like it's or Dante, whatever you want. But you know, but it's like you go through darkness to get to the light, and that's what the whole film is about. And like piecing it together, what is lost, deconstruction, reconstruction. It's good. It's good. Also, like I like how like you start piecing together like actual like flashbacks. You get more pieces of information, explaining why they're here, yeah, so on and so forth.
Very nicely put together. Very nice.
And the characters and a lot of the characters even within it, like the doctor, and like you can't help but admire Jigsaw for the elaborate puzzle he's kind of constructed.
That was a bit the perfect machine.
It was a bit weird, but
yeah, dude, like chill.
Well, you kind of compared it to like he compared it to like he compared it to like an illness because he's a doctor. It's like we must understand something like the root of everything in order to really confront it. So yeah, there's some commentary here. How sufficient and in depth it is another story, but it's there, you know.
And it's a franchise that's still going. Apparently, there's still it still offers things to culture.
Yeah, I heard a lot of them get. I heard a lot of them get kind of ridiculous. I've only seen the first one and the short.
No, it runs the normal gamut of horror franchises from mildly enjoyable to extreme, like the half considered and terrible. Like, you know.
Yeah, I heard it gets kind of ridiculous with the moralism, and then like they really insist upon Jigsaw as like this mastermind, Hannibal Lecter like philosopher kind of guy.
I mean that was here in the first one though. It was there.
It was, but like I heard it from my understanding, it gets even more.
It gets very extreme, but like as it should. You know.
Hey, I mean, what else are you gonna do?
Yeah. I mean, by part 7, what are you gonna do?
But I don't know. It's but there's definitely some interesting things here. Well, I remember like one of the cops says that Jigsaw isn't actually technically a killer. Because he's kind of a kidnapper, and he makes people either kill themselves or kill each other. Once again, kind of just sort of rationalizing and contextualizing like him as like he's a killer. Come on,
I'm not a killer. I just wrapped this naked man in barbed wire and made him crawl
Manson's
around.
A killer, so yeah, pretty much. Well, technically, he's not a killer. Come on.
Yeah, but just normal people eat that shit up though. Like, how many like edgy boys have you talked to? They're like, "Excuse me, Manson never killed anybody." And you're like, "Okay, cool, nice."
I don't talk to those people. I don't know about you.
I'm in Central Florida. That's all the people here. That's it.
But I do like the kind of like conceptually the idea of like almost like being pushed to like the brink of no return, where it's like, okay, I want to survive, so that means I am willing to sacrifice somebody else, or I'm willing to sacrifice part of my own body. When things get desperate enough, I'm able to chop off this foot, bleed all over the place, and murder this guy, or at least attempt to, if it means like the survival of me and my family. There's
I'd shoot the scumbag photographer if I was like in a room with him, and I would poison him to death if I heard my family crying on the phone. Yeah, dead. I win.
Yeah, and then in the end, it's kind of like, oh, I'll come back for you.
I'll come back for you.
That chance, he just shot you.
I mean,
um,
that's Adam's only save the cat moment. Really, is like when he was shot in the arm and then beats the fucking other red herring guy to death. Who went in there?
oh,
I
Zed.
got Zed. Yeah, when he beats
Yeah,
him to death with the fucking toilet cover or whatever the fuck he does. Oh man.
yeah. But then like everybody's kind of like this elaborate puzzle that goes even beyond.
Oh, and
I guess what
you're in Juan's like fingertips at that point. You're in the palm of his
I'm
hand because
in
it's just
Wanderland.
done. Yep. Oh my god, waxes and wands. It's really good. It's good. You
Yeah.
can tell it's early, and like he's only going to get somehow more capable and a lot more
he
ambitious.
he
But
really
able to,
develops his craft as he goes along
yeah,
with at least within the films that I've seen.
it is
Like
surprising to see it this well formed here. I mean, normally a first film is pretty
you
like
should
ambitious or stylized, and this one is. But I mean,
you should really see his short film of Saw also, because like I was actually quite surprised by like how like realized it was, and that's one thing I can say in compliment James Wan for, even if I don't necessarily like love his movies, I can at least kind of like acknowledge and appreciate like the craft behind it. That like when he makes something like Conjuring or Aquaman, he's making the exact film that he's trying to make. He
yeah,
knows what is a crowd pleaser and what pleases like the right audience. So when it comes to Saw, he knew what he was doing. Like people may call, so I hear some people call it like sophomoric and kind of like just like cheap, and I'm like, that's what makes it interesting. But
I
it's not
mean,
that sophomoric.
maybe
He knew what he's doing.
he knew exactly what he was doing. I think he's an extraordinarily talented filmmaker, and I think that his cultural impact makes him a really kind of unique master. He has impacted culture so many times through different decades. Like the man hasn't had a peak yet. Like there's no prime yet. He just keeps doing shit that's so incredibly that resonates so much all the time with like normal fucking people that you can talk to at the local dive bar. Like
And there's
just
enough
normal
variety. And
fucking
there's enough variety. I haven't seen his Fast and the Furious movie, but there's enough
me neither,
variety
but I'm
within
sure
his.
it's awesome.
I'm
Sure
willing to
it's
bet.
good.
I'm willing to bet it's the best one of them.
Me
But
too.
whatever that's worth. But I'm coming from a point of complete ignorance, so who knows? But no, um, he knows what he's doing. But then at the same time, I think with Saw specifically, it's not just that he knows what he's doing. He knows how to please a crowd, but he also knows how
Yeah.
to do something. No one says to say completely new, but like
Oh,
it's
crowd. Yeah,
well, yeah,
and
maybe
just
new,
being
yeah. Like
and just like appealing to the appetite of a crowd doesn't make
yeah,
one culturally like impactful. Those movies are while successful are forgotten within 5 years. They don't typically spawn all these sequels and stuff like that. I mean, we all need to take time out and like figure out why something is as momentous as it is when it comes out, especially if it has like a resonating quality to it. Like in the same respect, the films that are super popular now, which James Wan is responsible for some of them within the horror genre, like if they permeate culture and they're around for at least like 8 years, it's for a reason that like you have to diagnose because it's trouble, in
yeah,
my opinion.
absolutely. And to be honest, it feels like it's been around even longer than that. Like it
Yeah.
really does feel like part, yeah, at least especially with horror, it definitely feels like a crucial part within like
Oh,
modern
if we're
horror
going by the
films.
Saw franchise, that shit's apparently been around for like 16 years or something like that at this point. So
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's been a while, and it hasn't even been 2 decades yet, and there's a lot there. It feels like it's definitely made its mark, and that's what I can say about James Wan. He's made his mark within horror. Not just I was about to say earlier, like there's enough variety between like because Conjuring and Saw, you may be able to find some similarities, but like they're very different movies. I'm assuming the Fast and the Furious. I saw some scenes from that. Like I'm assuming that's quite different from like Aquaman. Like, and then of course there's a difference from his horror film. He has variety, but he also has his own unique identity that carries through within his films. And
Yeah.
I think that's like worth considering more than what
Kids
it
and all
currently
four.
is.
Awesome.
Um, what's that?
I said kids and aughts four. He is, in my opinion.
Hmm.
If you subscribe to that.
Depends. Sometimes.
When it comes to James Wan, I will. I can
People say
tell. I can tell
James.
that he directed the scene, man.
Yeah,
It's got a flair for the dramatic, but with purpose and momentum. Really interesting.
It's something, and to be quite honest, like it's genuinely tense too, just enough. Like I'm not somebody that like necessarily gets scared by horror films that often. I'm kind of more interested in like exploring the idea of fear and anxiety more than I am like actually being scared or being anxious when watching a film. But I think like with this film specifically, like I feel like the pacing of it, like it establishes something. It may deviate, it may diverge from its path, but it gets back onto it right at the right time, like where you are hooked.
That was really
Um,
well said. Yeah, it's part of that craft. I mean, either has to do with the structure of the script or the composition or both. But like it, because you have to wonder. I know that James Wan and Lee Winnell made the story, but I know Lee has solo credit for the script. But like, maybe it's just a perfect collaboration because, as you're saying, it diverges. It comes back in the same path. All the while showing like really quick, stylized, almost MTV like flashes of shit and like slow motion hugging that resolves. It's really weird how cliche it can be, but how right it feels. I don't know. Not as well said as you just put, but equally articulate in its own way. I'm sure. Like it works.
sure,
Man.
yeah, totally. I don't know,
Totally.
but it's kind of like one of those movies though, where like I'm sure that if I tried to sit down and write about it, I could. But it's kind of like one of those movies where I'm watching it, and I'm just kind of having a good time. Yeah, maybe not everything makes complete sense, and maybe some of the morals is kind of wacky, but at the end of the day, it's like I think it's a good movie, and
Yeah, that's a good
that's about
movie.
it. You know, it's a good movie. I enjoy watching it. It has its place in culture, and it reflects the time in which it was made, and our cultural sensibilities, and how that in turn became started manifesting within horror films. Um,
Absolutely. I think The
and
Conjuring is his masterpiece, but you can't get to The Conjuring without here. I mean, it's pretty incredible. You can see the foundation.
one thing that I was kind of actually kind of interested in when I was watching it, because it's often considered like a torture porn.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can see that like sort of like emotionally, but technically the beyond like the guy that's like laying in the middle of the floor with a pool of blood that isn't even dead. I didn't actually think it had that much gore in it.
I mean,
You
there's
have some,
definitely torture porn elements
yeah,
in it from found footage, like found media to tapes, and there's always a camera and someone's always watching.
yeah,
And it's always a harrowing situation
yeah.
that you could watch in a red room.
That's what I was saying. I was saying it, but it goes beyond just the blood and gore. Some
Yeah,
part of it's like the voyeurism behind it, in kind of the six sadistic games. But when it comes to Jigsaw, he isn't just watching. He wants to be in it.
yeah.
He wants to have a, you know, he really just gets off to that. I mean, even though he's like laying down on the floor.
I mean, that's
But
the major distinction between this and the other huge torture porn film of the time. Like, Hostel does not sympathize with the torturers; it sympathizes with the victims. This one, I
maybe
don't
that's
think
how
it
it
hates
should.
its victims, but like it
No,
sympathizes with Jigsaw hardcore. Hey, Jigsaw's like
it's no,
got a point.
it sympathizes with the victims. I would say that. But
I think that Jigsaw has a point in it for sure, though.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, maybe. It's kind of just like in my mind, I know like he does not have a point.
yeah, I mean,
But as
in
far as like
Hostel, the killers are like
text,
sadistic and like macho and fucking disgusting. And in this one, it's like I'm a man dying of cancer with a simple philosophy. Like it's very
I
different.
guess like with like Rob Zombie's films that were coming out around this time, they were sort of like sympathetic to like the villains, but it's kind of like there's like sadistic cops that were following them, like in Devil's Rejects.
Well, yeah, there's that more
But
like Russ
that's,
Meyer like exploitative quality to
yeah, it's kind
zombies
of
as
more, yeah, it's
well.
just kind of more like kind of rooted in kind of like exploitation, not really the whole,
Yeah.
what's the point? I haven't seen many Eli
Which is
Roth's
part of the
films.
return though, because like Wrong Turn and all those horror remakes of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Hills Have Eyes, and
Yeah,
wasn't
I
like
kind of,
French extremist fucking stuff like
yeah,
big at this time too?
I was just about to say, like, I can think of kind of like some French extremism that came out before and after around this time, and I feel like
Uh,
that's part of the, because if you think about like a film like Irreversible, that's 2002,
yeah, and like
and I
High
think
Tension was around this time.
yeah, I haven't seen that yet, but that has, I feel like probably the French maybe influenced us a bit, um,
Probably. At least gave us the tools
potentially.
to use to work out our psychology.
Yeah, because I'm also thinking of like when I think of like gory films, like Saw doesn't come to mind. Something like
Well,
Martyrs does, which came out
I
in
know that
2008.
Takashi Miike is even in Hostel, and I do
Oh,
think that Audition has a lot of future language for
well, Audition is kind of another one that I find interesting, and I guess like you could see like some
Audition's amazing. I love
French,
Audition,
yeah.
for
So you
the
can see
record.
some, you can see some French films, and then also maybe some Japanese films. Takashi Miike, hopefully I'm saying that right. He the thing about Audition is that's his tame movie.
Right.
The
I
other
love it.
ones are
I think
like,
it's so good. I think it's
yeah,
masterpiece, man.
it's
I
so
love
it's
it.
but I think like Saw, and I think Audition's a better movie than Saw, but like
Oh,
Saw,
easily.
Audition like takes its time. It's more kind of emotional torture, and that's mainly kind of like half of it. I think like kind of like the first half is a bit, it's taken more from like the man's perspective.
Mhm.
But at any rate, yeah, I think like the United States was maybe influenced by France and Japan when these
I mean, James
films
Wan,
came
we should say,
about.
is not American. We should
Yeah,
definitely
he's
say,
Malaysian Australian.
yeah, he was
Uh,
able to identify, to like show the symptoms of of a deeply American problem through a
yes.
very successful American franchise. But go on. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted
No,
to say before
that's totally
someone in
fine.
the comments is like
That's
James
that's
Wan.
yeah, but I don't know if any of it's really like that thought through in terms of like this is actual like intended commentary. As far as I'm concerned, like something like,
Me neither, but it must have been obvious at some point. Like
yeah,
at
yeah, it's
some
kind of
point.
like it had to like there's definitely something there. Like the way I see it, some directors that I like, it's they artists they don't necessarily always are consciously aware of what they're doing, but like they have the intuition that in like kind of cultural that reflects the cultural zeitgeist.
Yeah.
And that's something that I find of quality within within James Wan's work, and it came out just at the right time. Um,
Oh, no, it absolutely did. It's just, and if we're sitting here saying that like James Wan and Lee Wanell like are smart enough to put together a script like this or like to shoot a film like this, they're definitely smart enough to at least at some point realize that, oh, this is significant in a whole larger way. They're definitely able to do that. They have to be. I refuse to believe that they at least had to have that conversation.
well, not just that, but also like if you think about it, in addition to back onto the subject of what it reflects culturally, we also have like kind of this fear of like surveillance, like around that
Mhm.
time. And like if you think about like, oh, there's a two-way mirror, somebody else is watching from the other side, there's cameras watching us, and then also like once the internet is still fairly new and people, there's like a lot of fears. You think about like Edward Snowden and everything.
Oh,
I
there's
think that
surveillance
like,
all over the film. Donald Glover
yeah,
doing
exactly,
surveillance of Lawrence, Adam taking pictures of Lawrence. It's all there's so
exactly.
much surveillance.
Exactly, and there's so much surveillance, and we see that manifest in other films around the time. I think like something like, I guess The Dark Knight was 2008. If you think about that film, like it has elements, maybe somewhat from a reactionary point of view. It has the elements of surveillance. It has a little bit of commentary on torture too. The way that they detain Joker, and there's elements within it, and then also just terrorism in general. And I think that that's just something that was on somewhat consciously, somewhat not. And it's only kind of now where we start like, hey, maybe we should think about this a bit more critically instead of just like going at it. But
So yeah, I think there's a different set of
yeah,
responsibilities when dealing
yeah,
with like a superhero or a crime film than there
exactly,
are with a horror
exactly,
film.
exactly.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, crime it kind of like intersects in that respect. But
to a
that's just
certain
one
extent.
example. Yeah, it's just one example, but it's something that I noticed. But I think like at the same time, it's like with in some ways, like if they're watching it, there's probably some kind of like there's got to be some kind of like fear connected to like the fear of being watched and the fear of surveillance, but not just surveillance, but also kind of like um it's just yeah, like voyeuristic like kind of literally like kind of like torture porn where a red room kind of snuff kind of like aspect to it
Oh yeah.
at least within the film people are watching this and like they have to get off to it to some extent like it's not just like um so anyways basically what I'm saying is there's a sexual component to everything and if there's not it's still it like whether it's intended or
Mhm.
not and I think that the way we engage with blood gore I mean, like it or not, like there's this taboo aspect where we like seeing, or not necessarily like, but we're interested in the darkness within humanity. But I think that
Oh
that's
yeah.
where horror films, and especially a film like Saw, comes into play, where it's simulated, so we know it's safe, but we can kind of escape and put our heads in that mindset of like, even though that there's this mirrors reality and in some ways it confronts reality. As far as like watching the film, we know that this version is fake, and we can engage with it like a game. Um, and I think there's definitely something of worth within that.
That sounds fun. End it there.
All right, you want
I
to play a
mean,
game?
no.